Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app, O'Connor and Company.
It's 7:07. Thanks for tuning in here to O'Connor and Company to get your Thursday off the right way. It's the 8th day of January, and it is a busy news cycle. We'll get right to it momentarily. At 8:05, we'll also speak with Walter Kurt, independent investigative journalist. Inspired by the Nick Shirley investigation in Minneapolis, Walter's been knocking on Somali daycare doors in Ohio. And, well, you won't be surprised to learn what he found. That's coming up at 8:05. It's Larry O'Connor, and we've got Bethany Mandel with us all morning long. Good morning, Bethany. Thanks for being here.
Good morning. It is my pleasure to be here.
It's a mutual pleasure, which is the best kind, isn't it?
It is. It is. Wouldn't it be
Joining
awkward
us right
if we
now,
hated each other? Sorry.
I mean, I've been there. Not with you.
I know.
Ken Cuccinelli joins us now, former Attorney General of the Commonwealth of Virginia. And boy, could we use him back in that role right now. He's also former Deputy Secretary of Homeland Security and Director of U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. That makes you a pretty well-informed and wise observer of the events we saw in Minneapolis yesterday. Ken, thanks for joining us, sir.
Yeah, good to be with you, Larry.
Obviously, it's horrible that a woman died in this situation.
Yeah.
Could have been avoided, certainly. And as you analyze the video and as you see from all angles what went down there, what is your perspective on this in terms of this officer-involved shooting?
Well, it was certainly a legally defensible shooting. The guy was impacted by the vehicle and fired 3 shots, which I think you're going to hear later as time goes on is kind of a standard training response, a 2 to 3 shot burst, and then backed away to assess. That's pretty standard training. This guy had also, we now know, been dragged last summer. We're also, after you've seen the Minnesota politicians jump to their conclusions, not surprisingly, more information is coming out. For example, that these ICE officers had been stalked all day in their duties. And so somebody blocking the road, your military listeners will immediately zero in on blocking the road. That's an ambush position. And so they have to be concerned about that possibility. And it may be the case that this specific woman and vehicle had been identified earlier as one of those stalkers. So all of those things actually strengthen even just the initial case, which looks like a legitimate self-defense by the officer. I don't think there's any question about that. That doesn't mean that local prosecutors won't try to prosecute him. It'll get removed to federal court, but I think when it's all said and done, the courts, based on the legal standards set by the Supreme Court, are going to call this a legally defensible act of self-defense.
It seems like one of the arguments that we're getting from the left and the armchair legal analysts who show up on cable news sort of goes along these lines, and I'd love for you to respond. ICE officers have no authority to search a U.S. citizen or arrest them unless there's probable cause that they're harboring undocumented immigrants. This is a woman who sees these ICE officers, first of all, out of their jurisdiction with no right to stop her and question her. And from her perspective, she's surrounded by masked armed men who have no authority over her. She has a right to escape unimpeded. That seems to be their argument, or a big part of their argument. What do you say to that?
Well, the very first part of it is wrong. They do have the authority to stop her. If she is, straddling the road, perpendicular to the road, blocking their efforts, people obstructing their efforts are subject to arrest. And so the challenge that if you watch the first video that got out there, showed the one of the 3 officers that you can see in the video saying, "Get out of the car." That's a detention. That's a legal detention that they rather clearly had the authority to do, simply by the vehicle blocking their way. This would be a local cop's version of your tail light is out. I'm going to, I have the right to pull you over. So it is not simply the case that these folks only have authority over illegal aliens. That is absolutely false. They actually have fairly wide jurisdiction. Of course, it's federally based, not local. But this person, particularly in the context I described, looked like she was obstructing their efforts. And so they have authority to investigate, including detain her. And she attempted to flee, including hitting one of the officers with one of the most common weapons used against police officers, a car.
So what do you think, we're at Thursday right now. What do you think Minneapolis is going to look like a week from now? Are they just going to start burning stuff down?
Bethany, that is kind of the habit. It's sort of a community activity in Portland, Oregon.
Yeah.
And it's become one in Minneapolis. And when I look at Tim Waltz and when I look at the mayor and their response, mind you, the local police work for the mayor, the state police work for the governor.
Right.
They are in the chain of command of people with law enforcement responsibilities here, and yet they're jumping to conclusions. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure they've criticized President Trump, both of them, for what they perceive to be the same thing. Now they're doing it. So that kind of hypocrisy is, well, perhaps shocking but not surprising. Nonetheless, they've made their decisions regardless of information. And I would say that it is very helpful to have all the video. Mm-hmm. The armchair quarterbacks that Larry mentioned, are never particularly helpful. On the other hand, I remember back when body cams for police officers were being debated. I supported body cams on police officers. Police officers were very reluctant about it at first. And then when they started using them, they realized that, 90% of the bull crap complaints people make were resolved using their own body cam footage.
Yeah.
And, when an officer makes a defensible act like this one, those body cams and that video footage is very helpful in clearing them. And that's what I'm frankly seeing in these cell phone videos, and it does help to have multiple angles. The first video that got out on social media was from behind the vehicle. It wasn't, you didn't have a full picture. And then another one later came from another angle where you could see the car strike the officer.
Yeah. Yep.
That's a major factor mm-hmm. in the legal analysis of the act. And the Supreme Court's law in this area has been the same for a long time. You don't judge it by Monday morning quarterbacking it. It's what would a reasonable police officer do under those circumstances in that moment.
That's right.
In that moment.
That's right.
And
they don't have the benefit of hitting the pause button. They don't have the benefit of going frame by frame. That's right.
And if you look from the
hold that thought.
Video...
Ken Cuccinelli, we got to do a 60-second traffic check, but hold that thought seriously. I want to continue with you. But first, it's 7:15.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
Every teleprompter reader you see on cable news right now telling you what you're supposed to think about the video of the shooting in Minneapolis, when they make a mistake, they can just correct the error, make an announcement, and then move on to the next topic. Journalists, they submit a correction to the newspaper. Usually that correction is much smaller than the original headline, and then they move on to the next story. You put something out on social media and you get something wrong, you can delete your tweet or apologize and then move on. Police officers don't have that luxury. They can't guess and say, oh, well, maybe she's coming at me, maybe she's not. Maybe she's going to try to plow over all the other cops that are in the street, but maybe she's not. Maybe she's going to plow through all of the citizens that are sitting on the sidewalk. Maybe she's not. You have to make split-second decisions. And Ken Cuccinelli, that's what this officer did. He made a split-second decision, and for us to second-guess frame by frame now is so unfair to him. Mm-hmm. All that matters is that he clearly saw a threat there, and he had to minimize the threat. Isn't that the law?
It is stop the threat. It isn't kill, it's stop the threat. And if you look at the first video, from the time the two officers are approaching the left side of the woman's vehicle till shots are fired is a total of 8 seconds. That's it. That's 8 seconds. And their approach is a casual walk-up approach from the left. They didn't rush this vehicle, etc. Now, there was an officer in front of the vehicle. Now, let me pick at one item you said, Larry, because I'm hearing it a lot, is, threat to other officers. That's not part of the decision. That this person may be a threat at some moment in the future is not part of the analysis of whether this officer's shoot was a legitimate act of self-defense. There was no one else in the path of the vehicle other than the individual officer. Yes, she could have jammed it in reverse and so forth, but she didn't do that. Of course, she never had the chance to do that. So that is not part of the analysis. So the courts are going to keep it very, very narrow. It's going to be the protection of this one officer because no one else was in a position of risk. So there was no basis to act to protect anyone or anything else. And I've heard that phrasing a bit, but we should narrow it down to what the court's going to decide on. And again, if I were the Secretary of Homeland Security, if I were the Director of ICE, the information I have right now with the situation that they were dealing with yesterday, and the frankly fairly plentiful video angles, I would defend this to the hilt as a legally defensible self-defense action. But at the same time, this is an officer who was dragged last summer, who's now been in a legitimate shooting. This starts to wear on people, and it is his experience being dragged. May factor into his decision making. If you're the Director of ICE, if you're the Secretary of Homeland Security, do you want that? I may continue this guy with other duties. Certainly, I'm going to take him off the street for a while, just for his own safety, and so he can reach a point of, psychological equilibrium. You don't want PTSD, folks, and I'm not belittling that. I'm just saying, look, this is real. This guy is suffering from this. Nobody wants to go home dead. There's everybody wants to, who in this guy's case kisses his wife that morning, wants to show up at home and see the kids that night. And it's easy to depersonalize this. But when you're the one who pulls the trigger, it is a heavy, heavy burden.
Yeah.
It is a very heavy burden. This is not some casual occurrence at work. So, there's reason to be concerned about that as well going forward. I don't think anybody who's anti-ICE is particularly concerned about that. But, I've been the Deputy Secretary. That would be my input within the department the day after.
Yeah. And I think that's a really important thing to just say out loud, that, this officer is going to be suffering,
No.
especially, do we know his identity yet? Has he been doxxed?
No.
Yeah. I mean,
No.
I think that's coming, unfortunately. And he's carrying a really heavy
weight. And
weight.
that's obviously a safety issue.
Yeah, 100%.
Right?
For his family also. He's
Right.
really carrying a big heavy weight, and my prayers are with him, because this is why people don't want to enter law enforcement, because they don't want to end up like him. And I can't say I blame people, because he's in for a really unbelievably difficult next 6 months.
Yeah, so let's touch on that, Bethany, real quick. I think that the U.S. Attorney will look at this, and you'll get a pretty much objective review, and they'll determine it was a legitimate act of self-defense, i.e. no prosecution. Officers start with a great deal of immunity, but state authorities are going to do the same thing. And they're, if you've got a Soros prosecutor in there, it's a police officer, they're going to prosecute. It'll get removed to federal court, but there will be another in-court review from a very aggressive prosecutor. This is going to take a while. So that alone will keep this officer off the street for quite some time. It also may force the identification of the individual in court documents. I assume the department will attempt to keep that name sealed, but the prosecutor is going to know it. And would you trust a local Minnesota prosecutor to keep that private, even under a court order? I wouldn't.
Keith Ellison will leak it personally. Yeah.
Well, when he's done meeting with his fraudster supporters,
exactly.
and that's going to be a real domestic terrorism risk for this family, and that's going to be something that the department's going to have to deal with going forward in his case in particular. So that there are a lot of elements to this that are going to keep growing out of it. It's one incident in one action on one day of ICE operations, and yet it's going to be we're going to be talking about this for some time to come.
And we'll be drawing on your expertise as we did this morning, Ken Cuccinelli. Always great to talk with you, sir. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being a friend of the program.
Larry, good to be with you. Bethany, nice to talk to you.
You too.
You guys have a great day.
That's your former Virginia Attorney General and former Deputy Secretary of Homeland Security, Ken Cuccinelli. It's 7:24. Coming up, we got a brand new food pyramid. And, well, it's upside down from the old food pyramid. We're living in the world of protein first. We'll give you the details next.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station. Making sense of the news. News Talk 105.9. News now. Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
7:37 now on this Thursday morning, 8th day of January, and a busy one. If you missed our interview with Ken Cuccinelli, former Attorney General of Virginia and Deputy Secretary of Homeland Security, please catch our podcast because it was a good one and an informed conversation about the shooting in Minneapolis, something you're not getting on cable news. Speaking of podcasts, make sure you check out the Mom Wars podcast. You can catch it at Substack or wherever you get your podcasts. It features our co-host this morning, Bethany Mandel. Good morning, Bethany.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Of course. By the way, real fast, you're back from your long trip here. Mm-hmm. You were in Greece and Israel, 6 weeks total, all the kids. But you have a dog.
Yes.
Truman. Your wonderful dog. What did you do with the dog? This is why Meredith and I don't get a dog, because we travel so much.
So our mutual friend, Sarah, watched him, and I was literally just stalking her Instagram on the commercial, and he made a cameo on her Instagram. Yeah. He loved her so much, and Sarah and Tommy listened to the show, and I just want to shout out and say thank you to them for being like step parents, foster parents. I'm not sure. But
it was one of those moments where I asked the question where I already knew the answer to
I know.
it. But I knew that Truman was hanging with Sarah and Tommy, very good friends of mine and Meredith's. And I saw, you're right. Truman makes a cameo on the Instagram. I got some exclusive shots texted directly to me. Truman was living his best life.
So did you see this crazy...
out in rural Maryland.
Did you see this crazy NPR interview with the guy who used to do This American Life, Ira Glass, where he talked about how he had a pit bull that he adopted that ruined his life?
No,
did you see this?
But I will look it up. That sounds amazing.
I tweeted it. It was wild, but it just made me feel really good about buying a wonderful poodle mix from a breeder.
Truman's a great dog, and he definitely had a great little vacation from you guys, and I'm sure that he's happy to be home with his kids. Yesterday, the Department of Health and Human Services under Secretary Kennedy, as well as FDA head honcho Marty McCary, made a very significant change in Americans' diet recommendations. It's the new food pyramid, and in short, it's the same as the old pyramid, just completely upside down. In fact, Secretary Kennedy tweeted out a South Park sketch that illustrated it perfectly. Take a listen to this.
The pyramid doesn't work. We've already tried it.
It's upside down.
What?
Sir, the pyramid is upside down.
Turn the pyramid upside down. You can't be serious. That would put butter and fat at the top of the damn food pyramid. Get the president on the phone. Tell him to have some steak with his butter.
Tell him to have some steak with his butter. Not too far from reality. The new food pyramid says you need to emphasize protein. Make sure you've got good, healthy, real protein in every meal, healthy fats, intact whole grains, fruits and veggies, and a focus on gut health, including probiotics and such. You want to avoid sugary snacks and drinks and ultra-processed food. I'm a Gen Xer. I grew up with the original food pyramid where, the big basis of every meal were breads and carbohydrates and grains. And, well, look at me.
Yeah, there you go. So I want to share with our listeners that I have lost 50 pounds in the last 6 months.
Oh, I didn't realize it was that much, Bethany.
Yeah,
That's brilliant.
And I'm not gonna be a liar face. I used one of the injectables. It's called Zepbound, but I was on a very low dose. What really I think did it for me was I changed the way I was eating drastically. Yep. Basically doing this. I eat as few grains as possible, and I don't almost ever eat complex grains. It's rice basically, and protein. So like an apple and peanut butter was my breakfast with some yogurt instead of a croissant. And holy macaronis. My doctor, I actually had a visit with her yesterday, and she said she's never seen someone lose so much weight so fast on such a low dose and whatever. And I said, well, that's because I didn't just do that. I changed my diet a great deal.
That's the key.
That's it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm not against these shots because it does serve a purpose. It helps you with those cravings that are part of the sort of chemical reaction to changing the way you eat and also the psychological reaction to changing the way you eat. But ultimately, changing the way you eat is what needs to happen. It sounds like you did it right. Here is a friend of this program, Dr. Marty Makary, before he became such a big shot at the FDA. He made the announcement, cut 21.
Today marks the beginning of the end of an era of medical dogma on nutrition. For decades, we've been fed a corrupt food pyramid that has had a myopic focus on demonizing natural, healthy, saturated fats, telling you not to eat eggs and steak, and ignoring a giant blind spot. Refined carbohydrates, added sugars, ultra-processed food. This study in JAMA now shows that 60% to 70% of kids are getting their calories from ultra-processed foods. That's an epidemic. We now have a generation of kids addicted to refined carbohydrates, low in protein. They are literally nitrogen negative because we've used old flawed studies that used urine nitrogen to estimate body protein metabolism, and they missed the mark. The old guidelines had such a low protein recommendation that we are increasing that by 50 to 100%. Kids need protein. The old protein guidelines were to prevent starvation and withering away. These new protein guidelines are designed for American kids to thrive.
This is too important. We're going to continue this conversation here about these new guidelines, the MAHA movement, and the fact that this got done in the first year of the Trump administration here, and where this is going. Because you're a mom. You're a bit of a mom influencer, if I may, Bethany Mandel, and I'm interested in how you are going to potentially apply this now to the way you raise and feed your children. So we'll continue on the new food pyramid and how this affects your life in a moment. It's 7:43.
WMAL's Vince Colonnese, weekdays at noon on 105.9 WMAL, making sense of the news.
We have 40% of our kids now with a chronic disease. It is not their fault. This is something that is the result of bad advice from the government and a medical establishment that for decades peddled research from a flawed 1960s model. Today, we are setting the record straight. This is not a willpower problem of our nation's kids. This is something adults have done to kids, and we're going to fix it.
Sorry, Dr. Makary. Didn't mean to step on you there. Dr. Marty Makary, the FDA head honcho there, announcing the new food pyramid. So now, and I have no doubt, it's right, the flawed 60s model. absolutely ended up making us fat and lethargic, and yes, addicted to carbs. If you don't think you're addicted to carbs, try cutting them out of your life for a while and see.
That was what the Zep-Band did to me, 100%.
Yeah. But Bethany, here's the challenge. Fresh proteins, chickens, meats, fish, fresh vegetables. First of all, it takes more effort to cook those foods. Instead, processed foods are easy. You know, they're simpler. Sometimes they're cheaper. Oftentimes it takes more focus and planning to have those fresh fruits and vegetables and proteins in your refrigerator so they don't go bad, or you're going to the grocery store more often so that they stay fresh. I mean, this does take intention to be able to cook and eat this way. Yeah,
no, but you know what's cool is not dying.
There is that.
I really like not having diabetes. So the reason I did this was because I went to the doctor and I was pre-diabetic and precipitously close to diabetes. And that's why I got so aggressive. But I don't want diabetes. And so I'm going to put in some work. And there's so many ways that you can do this as a mom of 6 who was working full time and homeschooling like I am. You can batch cook. You can freeze things. You can meal plan. It doesn't mean it's easy, but nothing that's worth having in life comes easy.
You know, very well said. And meal planning is a big part of it. Batch cooking is a big part of it. That's what I do as well. And I've taught my kids how to do it. And I mean, I got to think this might be a good segment on the Mom Wars podcast. We could even do sort of a video cooking demo about how you can use an Instant Pot to cook a whole lot of chicken in advance. Put them in these, and you can yes, and whole grains are good. I'm with you. Rice is pretty much the one grain I have at every meal now instead of potatoes or a side of bread or that sort of thing. It's not ideal, but your body does need some level of carbohydrates.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I the thing that I struggle with is. So I follow this influencer woman who is amazing, and she has a literal salad bar in her house. She has 10 children, and she has an actual salad bar. I want to do that, but not a giant salad bar. I want to have fresh fruits and vegetables and cheeses on my table all the time, kept at a safe temperature, and I've still not cracked that code. So if any listeners have suggestions, I want to have a party platter out, but all the time, so that my kids can be snacking on those things.
By the way, it's such a great idea. And then you tell we used to say no snacks between meals, no snacks between meals. No, actually, if you're having fruit, if you're having, a salad, if you're having broccoli or asparagus, go ahead, eat as much as you want between a meal. You don't want to have a sleeve of Ritz crackers or, 3 bags of M&Ms between meals.
So I learned when my sugar crashes, that's when I would reach for a carb. And so I'm doing lots of string cheese and different stuff instead to keep my protein up so that I don't have that instinctual I'm shaky and I need a carb so that I can get through to dinner.
And sometimes you need to shock your system to go into this. It is hard to slowly wean yourself off this. Sometimes you really do have to go cold turkey. And yes, that's hard. That's where some of the shots can help with the cravings and things like that. But it is worth it, I think. This is what the Maha movement was all about. And when people saw that extraordinary political moment when lifelong Democrat Kennedy, for God's sake, Robert F. Kennedy, joined Donald Trump on that stage that Charlie Kirk helped stage and put together, let's not forget, and created that political alliance, which I will always say was the final game changer in the 2024 election. A lot of people who were skeptical of Trump, but they were bought into the idea that we needed to change the healthy habits of this country with Kennedy's lead. This is what they voted for, and now they've got it. And it's an extraordinary moment, I have to say. And it's going to continue. The ripple effect will continue for generations. By the way, have you heard much criticism of this? Have you heard any of the scientific community who's first to run to the microphone and say how Kennedy is killing people? I haven't heard much criticism of this at all.
So it's funny that you say that because I have seen it, and I actually made a note to myself in case we did this segment. The criticism has been he's spotlighting butter. So that's the Washington Post on their Instagram posted, well, he says that you should eat butter. I'm like, I'm sorry, what? That's it? That's what you have? But they had to pick something. And so the Washington Post and the New York Times, actually, and the New York Times, they in their daily newsletter this morning also, they identified the enemy here, and it's butter. Not margarine, butter.
If you actually follow these guidelines, butter is actually a really healthy fat to have.
Yes.
You just don't want to stack that butter on top of a bag of potato chips.
You can't. Don't be Paula Deen, but you need fat. You just throw in a little pallet just to fry up some onion. It's fine. I did that for dinner last night.
It's 7:53.